Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Historical Humans podcast. And today we are talking about the Tamil Kings. My name is Justin Woods, and I'm joined today by my fellow co hosts, Colum Coleman and Aaron Gilpin. And yeah, today we are going back to India because we clearly don't spend enough time here. There's a lot of history and some really interesting historical events.
Yes, and we are going to southern India this time. Last time we were in India on this podcast, I believe we were in northern India, specifically Bhopal and the absolute disaster that happened there.
Wait, you mean there's more than one part of India?
Yes, it's literally called a subcontinent. This place is freaking massive.
I thought it was
And lots
between
of his.
Michigan and Indiana.
Mhm.
Oh wait, no, that is India. Oh dear God.
You ruined your own joke. That's how early it is.
Yeah.
That's how early
well,
it is.
well, Justin sails the ocean blue in 1492. Um,
I was going to India and I ended up in Indiana.
Even
No.
worse.
yes, we're going to be talking about the Tamil Kings. These are three separate dynasties that are all part of the same ethnic group. These are the three great Tamil Kings. There are other tribes, chieftains, cities, and other such polities that are distinct from them, but these are sort of the three that rose to the most power and prominence that we'll be working with today. They are the Pandya, the Chola, and the Chera. And together, they span 21 centuries of human history.
But I thought you said it was three Tamil kings. That's a lot more than three, I think.
Yeah, they're called the yeah, they're called the Tamil Kings because they come from three dynasties.
Interesting. So we're going back to India. Obviously, we're talking about the kings. What makes them so unique? What makes them so special? What separates them?
Well, well, one thing, they lasted with near continuous rule over southern India for 21 centuries, which is more than basically any other polity in existence, with the possible exception of the Egyptian pharaohs. And even they managed to screw up at the finish line more than once.
Yeah, I wonder what would happen. I wonder what happened. Let's see. The Nubians, the
The
Babylonians,
Persians, the Greeks,
yeah.
the Macedonians, the Romans,
Wow. So
the Hittites, the Sea People.
what you're saying is they really were the historic village bike. Everyone got a chance.
That was for the Egyptians. These people here, they seem to fare much better. Um, yeah, these are the three dynasties that come to the most power, and I just have to start off by saying that I am sorely disappointed as our man behind the curtain for research and writing here at Historical Humans. I am sorely disappointed in the severe lack of publicly accessible information on these people.
I mean, I think we should just highlight the two quick facts of we're English speaking. We don't speak Hindi, which is the official language of India, nor do we speak any of the dialects that some of the information would be written in.
There's
But
a
Yeah,
lot of languages there, isn't there? Yeah.
that's why
yeah,
I said
but
all of the
yeah,
dialects.
Yeah,
yeah.
there's like hundreds, isn't there?
Yes, the Tamil people are a linguistic group in southern India. They are still there, um, because they are at this point basically immortal. They survive everything.
What?
Yeah, I mean, like at this point, there could be a whole ass apocalypse, and the
I
Tamil
mean,
people will probably still be there, being like, "Hey,
yeah.
how's it
Well,
going?"
I mean,
yeah,
to be fair, you live in like southern India. It's already hot as hell. It's humid as hell. You get monsoons. Yeah, it makes sense. They're
Yeah, they are basically unkillable. Personally, I like to attribute this to the historical worship of Shiva in the region, the goddess of destruction.
So they've been ahead of the game the entire time. They're just like, if we're gonna be
Yeah.
destroyed, it's gonna be by Shiva, no
When
one else.
Yeah, when your primary deity is the ender of the world, the anti-life, and the uncreation of all things, you got you
That
got it made.
sounds
that's
that
metal
sounds
as hell.
right. Like they must have a lot of good death metal bands there.
I don't know.
No,
I don't know
What?
what a region looks like.
Heavy metal has not quite taken off in India yet.
Guys, like I'm for like some like what's it called, a Sabaro? Like I feel like that'd be amazing to hear in like a death metal
No,
band.
Sbarro is Italian pizza, New York.
Oh,
Yeah, but like mall Italian pizza from New York. It's not. There's very rarely ever an independent Savaro.
I swear there was an instrument that like sounded similar. That's from India.
You
I've,
you,
I've,
you just
I've,
get an Italian chef like flinging pizza slices. That's a part of the band.
If anyone knows what I'm talking about, like please tell me.
Yeah,
Like
please inform us because right now we're just.
please. I've trapped them with pizza, and the gate is it's slowly constricting me. Please.
to be fair, I can easily be trapped with pizza.
All right.
So the
So
Tamils.
all right, yeah, all right. So let's just get in. I'm gonna get into this proper now. After just ran, just you know, I just found the level of dismissive footnotes and just lack of information very insulting for something that was as long standing and important as these people. I mean, seriously, I'm gonna call up Britannica here. Why is everything on this entire region a footnote and a little nub of an article? Why?
Probably because it lasted 21 centuries.
And Britannica says nothing.
Well, look at the first half of that name.
Yeah, they were there. They're one of the things that we're gonna talk about at the end of this.
Oh, jeez. All right, if you're playing the historical humans drinking game,
yeah,
take a shot.
Yeah, it always comes back to people with red clothes.
God Saves the King starts slowly playing in the background.
Yeah. All right. All right. So these Tamil kings, they collectively ruled what is known as Tamilakam, which is just basically the kingdom of Tamil. And each dynasty ruled its own nation or Nadu. These dynasties often existed uh, simultaneously with one another, and they existed semi-independently of one another for various parts of their history. There was a lot of competition between the various Tamil kings for control, power, the usual things you do when you rule an army.
Conquer the world.
Yeah, they ruled by divine mandate. They were the three chosen by heaven to rule. Pretty nice justification when you're already on the throne.
God told me I could. God put me here.
Yep.
I've heard that one before.
Your general with the knife standing next to the throne, realizing you just called him God.
Oh no!
Take it away. Yes. With this divine mandate called Muvendhar, they were able to rule over southern India and Sri Lanka. They were, despite their constant infighting, they were known for promoting literature in the sort of first centuries CE. They were prolific builders. They built a number of very prominent and very beautiful Hindu temples, a good number of which have survived and are very beautiful even today.
So the British didn't steal them?
And aliens didn't build them?
Correct. Yeah, it's pretty hard. It's pretty hard to steal some things, like the entirety of a city-sized temple. I mean,
I'm
don't
just,
get me wrong, the Germans did it at Pergamon, but still,
I was gonna say the
that
British
takes
also
some efficiency.
they took off all the gems that originally adorned the Taj Mahal.
Yep.
there were gems on the Taj Mahal.
It was bejeweled, the whole thing.
Oh my
It
god!
was the world's first bedazzle gun.
Yeah, no, it was legitimately bedazzled in like precious gems and jewels.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jesus Christ!
Yeah. The a number
Where
of
did they go?
Aaron, I will give you one single guess to figure out where they went.
You gotta be kidding me!
No,
The
they
crown
literally,
jewels.
yes, legitimately.
there yes, yeah, fun fact on this tangent here. During the reign of Queen Victoria, the British felt very slighted that they were ruled only by a queen and not by an empress. So they gave her the title Empress of India, ripped everything they could out of the country, and put it on her head.
Part of which includes the
Goddamn.
largest diamond ever found, which now is about half of what it was when it was originally built, but it tends to be the crown piece.
God damn.
Do, 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 do. Take another drink if you're playing the historical humans drinking
I
game.
already
Yeah,
did.
many times. Please stop. We're recording.
Play it.
It's not 5 o'clock anywhere right now.
Well, I only have Diet Coke, so
That's okay. It does not need to be alcoholic. It's all in fun. But yes, the British did come in and they looted India. Surprise,
Yes.
surprise to absolutely nobody.
But this is all after the Tamil King's time. So because they were such prolific builders, because they lasted so long, they were key to the rise and spread of Hinduism, especially in Sri Lanka and southern India. They very much facilitated it as the state religion, particularly the worship of Shiva. Shiva is one of the uh, main gods of Hinduism, and she was the primary deity to which the Tamil kings were largely devoted for most of their history. Um, she is the destroyer of the world, and she exists alongside the deities Brahma and Vishnu as kind of the big three cornerstones of the of the Hindu religion. So this is a very important deity that's going to get a lot of temples and things dedicated to her. And I mean a lot. Like, we're going to talk about, I want to say, like 5 or 6. That's like not even 1%.
I do want to add a small footnote here. If we actually did discuss one of the many temples in a Historical Humans Reacts video, where we talked about a temple to Shiva that was falsely attributed to little green guys, I guess.
Yeah, basically people didn't understand the construction, but you can watch our video. Justin will have to link it to you.
Yes.
To learn more about that. These people here, the Tamil Kings, were also very powerful in terms of trade. They traded in a number of things, ranging from spices to pearls, from Indonesia, China, all the way up to the city of Rome. So much so, in fact, that it is said that the Panja sent ambassadors to Emperor Augustus, and that a number of Panja kings had Roman bodyguards.
The Praetorian Guard?
Yeah. I'm not sure. I don't so much know if that was Praetorian Guard. My money is on people that accompanied what's his name? First, Aaron, help me out. First triumvirate marched into Persia with like 3 legions, got wiped out.
Cassius.
I'm guessing it's probably people who accompanied Cassius into Persia and didn't die.
Yeah.
would be my best guess.
Well, I think this is also kind of a good note to make a small little tangent here of we think of the historic world and we think of it in these like independent bubbles, but realistically the historic world and arguably the prehistoric world was a lot more interconnected than we actually realize.
Yeah,
Sorry, Crassus. Cassius
Crassus.
is one of the
Crassus, thank you.
conspirators.
Yeah,
There's too
yeah,
many.
yeah.
There's too many of the bastards that go like Cassius, Crassus.
Okay, but like any Roman name, you just add Asius or Ia at the end, and you usually can hit like 90% of them.
Yes. Marcus Licinius Crassus. That's the one you're thinking of.
Yeah.
But
Yes,
like
Crassus, but yes, yeah.
to have some interchange between India and the Europe and Rome, who had this massive projection of power, even though it didn't quite reach the Indus River Valley, their influence still trickled, and this is clearly a level of projection of Rome's power because you're not going to have Roman guards to the leaders if they weren't well trained, if they weren't very skilled at what they did, and like you said, if these are truly the ones that come from Crassus's failed campaigns, then you know that they are militarily trained and very expert.
Yeah. Um. Yeah, they were. Yeah, they were decently trained. The ones on Crassus.
Nothing like a
Campaign.
bunch of Europeans to go on a work holiday.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna go work in India for a few years. Get to experience a new culture.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, because that's exactly what the Romans were all about.
Yeah. Well, 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 fun fact: the Romans actually had a term for China because they interacted with the Chinese at some point.
Yeah.
So this whole trade network is interconnected. Even though most of these people will probably never have laid eyes on anyone even remotely of the same ethnicity as the man on the other end.
But that just highlights two of the big trade networks because you get the Silk Road that comes directly out of China and goes through the Middle East, and then you have the lower route that goes through, like you said, Persia and India. So
Yeah, it kind of comes round the southern part of the Indian Peninsula and goes up either and goes up sort of into the Persian Gulf, some either into the Red Sea via Nubia or just sort of up along the coast of Persia.
yeah, so they had a lot of travel back then. It just they didn't have long distance ships in the same way that we imagine them at like the peak of the world trade in like the 16th century. But they also, you know, it just took a few months,
Yeah.
maybe a year. But if you're willing to travel, a Khajiit has wares if you have coin.
Please stop. No, we're not drawing that analogy here. So yeah, the Tamil people. Just back in. They are and remain a linguistic group in southern India and Sri Lanka, and Tamil is one of the oldest languages in India. This is one of the first languages we have in what is essentially a cradle of civilization. So this is ancient as all hell. um, the first dynasty of the Tamil to ever get mentioned is the Pandya dynasty, and our first writing of them comes from the Greeks of the 4th century. Now, Aaron, as a classicist, can you tell me what the Greeks were doing in the 4th century? Say the later half.
4th century, 300.
BCE.
Alexander.
Yep, that's right.
Oh my God, that's right.
The Greeks
Oh.
have conquered Persia and have made their way to the Indus River, where they very briefly wage war on the kings of India, who all unite against them. Thus, our first mention of the Pandya dynasty and the Tamil comes from the 4th century Greeks.
God, we're just really hitting all of the like historical humans bingo markers today. We've already talked about the B word. We've already talked about Rome. Now we're talking about the Greeks and Alexander. All we're missing is Genghis Khan.
Sadly, there will be no cons. The Mongols did not successfully penetrate into India, and from what little I could find, the Tamil were more than happy to just trade with them from afar.
Those horsemen, they
Yep.
scare me. I fear no man, but that thing scares me.
It's just a horse.
It's just a horde of horses. And very, very vaguely on the back of the horses, you see a bunch of, Mongols, but not quite all Mongols.
Yeah. Yes.
So
And
the
it is
Greeks were the first ones to. Oh, yeah. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. So the Greeks in the 4th century BCE are the first to write of them. The Greeks do get consistent writing first, and thus this becomes our first written source for these, confirming that yes, the Pandya are here. The Pandya are Tamil. A few centuries later, 1st century CE, they send ambassadors to the Roman emperors, particularly Roman Emperor Augustus.
That's
which
such
is
a flex, though.
Yeah.
The fact that they were around for the Greeks and then they were also around for the Romans.
Yeah.
Because the Romans
Yeah.
are sitting there like, we worship everything the Greeks
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. One of the fun things about this is they're recorded by Alexander the Great's historians. Then they are still there sending ambassadors after the last successor state to Alexander's empire has fallen.
Wow.
Because the last successor falls when Augustus is crowned emperor, because that final war is his conquest of Egypt. And that's the last Greek kingdom.
So I love how for the Tamil it's just business as usual. Like, those Europeans, their dynasties rise and fall, and we're hanging out.
The Pandya have apparently for like the last 360 years just chilled in this one spot and done their thing and been more or less perfectly fine.
That's honestly incredible, especially with how volatile empires tend to be.
Well, there's a couple of things that factor into that. One is the religion of the early Tamil kings, which is called Jainism. It is an ancient Indian religion. It speaks of spiritual purity through nonviolence. Basically, the less harm you do onto others, the better person you are, and the more someone who doesn't really know the religion, sort of like the more spiritually, what's the word, God,
Pure, good.
Yeah, I guess the more cleansed your soul is would probably be the best way to put it. And this religion is still practiced today by an estimated 6 million people. So while it is not extremely massive like some of the other major world religions, it is still on the board. It's doing well. The other reason why the Tamils do so very well is that for most of their history, they're not imperialistic. They're a defensive state. They are more concerned with maintaining what they have at home than they are with trying to build outwards. And that means that a lot of your very aggressive neighbors don't view you as a threat, and thus you are not a priority for them to attack.
But I think it is very, very good point to just highlight the fact of, you mean when you focus internally and you don't have expansionist doctrine, that it brings stability and longevity?
That appears to be what has happened for a large part of their history. Now they do get imperial ambitions at a certain point much later, but for the most part, they were not seen as being in competition with the empires that ruled to the north of them. And thus, those empires felt free to fight each other, fight threats from outside the Indian subcontinent, and basically just let the South do its thing and profit by trading with them.
See, I feel like we tried that here in the U.S., but that didn't quite work out.
That's another one for the bingo list.
Yes, if anyone had Justin praises the Confederacy,
Hey, no. It was a jab at the Confederacy. But yes.
well, let's be honest. Let's be honest. We have been practicing that with the South for several hundred years, thanks to Sia and the Banana Republics.
Ooh.
Mm.
Okay.
A much worse version.
Oh God. Yeah.
You want to keep going with me? I
No,
can
we're
go
good.
12 rounds. I can go 12 rounds like this. I might bleed, but I can take as good as I give.
See, I just
Okay,
like
easy
giving
there,
the
Rocky.
I like giving the underhanded jabs at some recurring topics because you tend to notice history is very cyclical and some main players really making note of themselves.
History doesn't repeat, but sure as hell does rhyme.
That makes about as much sense as a screen door on
Anyway,
a submarine.
after a few hundred years, at some point, it's not entirely clear. There is a shift away from Jainism towards Hinduism, specifically what is known as Shaivism, which is the worship of Shiva, the goddess of destruction. Um, with it, the Tamil kings become more aggressive, not imperialistic, but essentially what we see is a transition from relatively minor holdings trying to maintain themselves to basically the Tamil kings violently competing with one another like they're Italian city states in the Renaissance.
Ooh. All right,
It
so
is
there's another one.
yeah. It very much is because it's a war of religious devotion, of architecture, of economics, and of just straight up trying to kill each other.
So you mean the Crusades? God, I like this game of
No,
pulling
no,
historical.
not the Crusades because they're all the same religion.
Oh, okay. So
They're all the
now,
same. The part of the competition is sort of like uh, my temple is better than your temple because my temple has a fancy duomo. My temple is better than your temple because it's built on top of water.
see,
Think
my
of
temple
it like
is better than your temple.
think of it as like when Europeans started building a bunch of awesome like cathedrals. It's because they did it out of sheer competition because some archbishop was like, how come France gets a nice fancy temple? I want a nice fancy temple."
Yeah.
I want my church to be
My
big.
spire is taller than your spire.
Hey, it's not about the size of the spire, but about the size of the steeple, okay?
I wasn't even going there, but here we are. Um.
Here's the
Anyway,
spire, here's the steeple.
the Panja were based out of the city of Madurai. That is going to be their headquarters for almost the entirety of their history. And Madurai was the first real period of history that we have a lot for here for the Panja is the Sangam period because Madurai happens to be the only place really producing Sangam poetry. It has 3 separate academies specifically for the production of poetry and literature.
Honestly, that's big. We talk about this very, very consistently about how certain specializations and like especially the arts, when a culture and society is starting to produce artworks like poetry, like art, to where people can focus on that versus food production, it usually means you're doing pretty all right. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys ever went through this, but like I took an empires class in my undergrad where we talk about one of the main things to building empires is that like surplus of food production. It is one of the most consistent things across the world. Like, to build an empire like this, you have to have that food production.
Well, speaking of speaking of food production, the dynastic symbol of the Pandya just so happens to be a fish.
A fish. Southern India. Indian Ocean. I can't seem to make that connection.
Yeah, it seems to be a fit. Yeah. So, feeding people, very important here. Now, Sangam poetry translates roughly as poetry of the noble ones. It is the earliest known form of literature in southern India, and the academies at Madurai produced a large portion of the Tamil literature for this period, which lasted from about the 4th century BCE to the 4th century CE. Wow. Those dates are there because we have no record of them before the 4th century, and thanks to what Alexander's people recorded, we're like 50% certain they didn't have it prior to him. You know, or at the very least that the tradition wasn't strongly ingrained at the time. Again, this is a conqueror several hundred miles away looking in at an army marching towards him.
Well, and
then immediately leaving.
Yeah, that's part of it. And then the other part of it too is a lot of times when we get dates like this for writings and for artworks, and I'm very much generalizing in a lot of ways, but a lot of this stuff doesn't fully survive right away. Like, they're not instantly producing stuff that's surviving. A lot of times the writings are on materials that have since degraded. So we kind of lose both ends of, like, the most recent stuff and the oldest stuff. So the dates we have are pretty much like the smack dab middle. You can usually expect to have quite a few years of bleed over on both ends.
Yeah, basically these dates are, we can guarantee that it was happening between these between these points.
Whereas in reality, they probably had the writing tradition a lot earlier. It's just we don't have proof.
Additionally, like all things, it starts out small. You don't get to 3 freaking academies overnight. That aside, this poetry focuses on themes of royalty and love, and it had 2 things that makes it somewhat unique for ancient literature. Number 1, while talking about royalty and love, it featured women as main characters, as in stories told largely from a woman's perspective. In what we consider classical literature in a lot of the world, that is simply not done. Women are not given voices, are not put in the forefront of things. And part of the reason why they are in Sangam poetry is because Sangam poetry was very much open to having women authors.
Ooh.
Which is also something not largely done. To call back to another thing that we've done on this channel, another podcast, there's a woman in Greece called Sappho of Lesbos, who is very famous for being able to write poetry while also not having a dick.
It truly was a feat. And, I think if you haven't listened to the Sappho Lesbos podcast, great podcast, great stories. But it's kind of an interesting trend of women not really having the same voice throughout history. And it's always awesome to see a lot of these, like, precursors to what we know and love in the modern day.
Yeah, and now with that, I think it's a good point to jump right into the sort of meat and potatoes of our Pandean.
Come on, you missed the low hanging fruit.
I'm not going.
Potatoes.
I'm not going there.
Fish and potatoes. Fish is meat.
No. Anyway, so for the Pandyans, their rulers are largely referred to as either Jatavarman or Maravarman. This is sort of the name that they're given as more or less an honorific in front of them. It changes depending on who's in charge and what part of history we're in. But yeah, so following Following the Sangam period, there is the First Pandyan Empire, which takes off in the 6th century CE. This empire was founded by a man named Kandungan, and it largely marks the time when the Panjas rise up out of Manduri and begin to conquer their neighbors, other Tamil tribes, chiefdoms, and cities. It begins with Kangdun's defeat of the Calabras, and following this conquest, the territory of the Timilakam is divided between the Pandya and the Pallava, who are a group that we will see come up several other times. However, they are almost entirely neglected when telling this story. From what I can tell, they deserve to be 4 great Tamil kingdoms, with the Pallava included. But literally anything I could find when researching this disagreed very strongly. So that's my odd one out, is that these Pallavas deserve a higher place on the totem pole. This Pandaean Empire doesn't last as long as its predecessor, which was the nice Sangam period of poetry and just sort of ruling a city, more or less. As in 850 CE, just a mere 300 years later, the Chola people begin to push them out. The Chola are another of the great Tamil kingdoms, and this is where we really start seeing a lot of that infighting among the Tamil start to happen.
Tamil Civil War.
Oh no!
Yeah. Well, it's technically not a civil war. They're technically a series of semi-independent ruling dynasties, all vying with one another for supremacy.
Oh, so it's Tamil Kings or Tamil Wars, Rise of the Chola.
Something like that.
I'm thinking it's like the period of the 3 popes, where each one's like, I'm important. No, I'm important. No, wait, me.
Yeah, there is a lot of there's a lot of political bullshittery, dynastic marriages, multiple princes ruling simultaneously, because that was a thing down here where basically everybody who is the son of the last king is part of the ruling council for the next king, as equals to said king.
You know, that we kind of laugh about that, but that's kind of a smart way of keeping everything in house, and also kind of taming any unnecessary uprisings.
Yeah,
it could also easily be a great way for a few coup d'etats.
Yeah, but this isn't England. You're not going to get the royal family fighting and killing each other in here.
I'm just saying, coup d'etats are kind of universal.
Right. Princess Diana was decades ago. We can stop.
No, I will never forget that French tunnel.
Anyway, listen. The point is that at any given time, for any one of these dynasties, there's about a dozen people in charge running the thing, all of which have various layers of alliance, vassalship, and other such extremely messy politics interlinking them with the other dynasties. It's just a matter of who controls which territory, who gets to say what to who. And it's a very important matter, but it's just fighting for supremacy, and it's going to be near constant. The Chola win many military victories against the Pandya, but the Pandya are very quick to reclaim their losses. Now, at first, this goes very well for the Pandya. However, like waves on a beach, eventually the tide just keeps coming in, and the Pandya can't keep it out anymore. And the Chola will take over by 1020 CE. The Chola have pushed the Pandya all the way back to Sri Lanka.
Wow.
Which where they will stay in exile until the 13th century. Um, However, the Chola recognize the need for stability and the power of what is at this point a at minimum 1400-year-long continuous rule. So when they appoint their viceroys from their own family to rule over the former Pandya lands, they refer to themselves as Chola Pendyas.
Ooh.
They don't rule as just Chola. They rule as Chola Pandya because they recognize the Pandya as a much older and more stable dynasty that they need to attach themselves to quickly.
Again,
Admiralty.
another very recurring theme all across the world of when empires and dynasties try to establish themselves, they usually do a callback to an earlier one. I mean, you look at any example, they all do it. I mean, every single European dynasty always ties back to either Rome or Greece at some degree or regard. In the Middle East, you've got half a dozen empires and societies that are always called back to Babylonians, Sumerians, Assyrians, Persians. I mean, you have a million different ones, and every single group is like, yeah, we actually come from this really important one that we venerate. I mean, it's half the reason that Rome conquered Greece and basically borrowed a lot of their architecture, art style, because they're like, look at us, we are the natural successor. And a very common way I like to trigger these two is we like to talk about the succession of Rome, where
He calls it triggering. It's not. It's not even a debate.
Rome
But we
fell
don't
and
have to
then
go into.
Constantinople.
We don't have to go into this right now. Justin, we've been here for 45 minutes. We're not even halfway through the damn Pandyas.
Okay, sorry, yes, but they make claims to previous dynasties, so it's not an uncommon trend.
And if that doesn't work, God said I could, is usually the answer.
Which these people also had.
And if you're smart,
Remember the divine mandate from earlier. Shiva said we get to do this or the world ends.
Wait,
Or maybe it was and the world ends. We don't know.
Wait, is this guy serious? I don't want to find out. We should just
just listen to him. Anyway, the Pandya experienced a resurgence in the 13th century, where after 200 years of exile, a man named Maravarman Sundara Pandya takes the throne in 1216, and he takes back the Pandya territories that were lost to the Chola.
Ooh.
They reclaim it. These people that come back, you might know something about the few that we are going to mention. Almost all of them are referred to as a Sundara Panya, which suggests a lot of which suggests a dynastic merge between the Pandyas and other powerful houses living in Sri Lanka at the time. As you know, you saw what the Chola did when they took over, calling themselves Chola Pandya. These are now Sundara Pandya. And with the reign of Maravarman Sundara Pandya, the Pandya are going to have their golden age. They're going to have their period of glory. They had their literary empire 1,000 years ago. They had their own petty kingdom empire in southern India, and now they're going to reclaim it. And this time, there will be no joint rule. This time, it's all Pandya.
Wait a minute. It's all Panya? Always has been.
Oh no.
Yeah. And that is thanks to the man who achieves who achieves what is going to be the zenith of their power. Jatavarman Sundara Panya, who rules from 1251 to 1268. And in 17 years, this is what he does. He conquers both the Chera and the Chola, the two other great Tamil kingdoms. They're gone. He then moves to conquer the Hosala and does. He proceeds to make a vassal of the Kadava while conquering the Kongu and the Magadai. He defeats the Telugu, but he allows their ruler to return, his successor to return to the throne. He then invades Sri Lanka and inserts dominance over that. And after conquering all, what is this? 8 peoples. He conquers 8 nations. What does he do with all the money? He does one of the things that the Panya have done best since the start. He builds shit for God. Shiva gets a bunch of new temples here. One of the first things he does is he builds the east tower of the Meenakshi Temple in Madurai, the ancient capital and homeland of the Pandya. This is a very famous temple. I believe it is a World Heritage Site today. It is so he builds the entire eastern tower of it. He then basically dips an entire temple in solid gold.
As one does.
As is the only way I can describe the absolute wall of proper nouns I'm going to have to spit at you right now.
Here we go, boys.
Right. So here's what, Justin, get your icon out of the way.
Sorry.
I can't
Okay,
read
sorry.
over your historical humans flag over the whole page.
My bad.
He proceeds to gild in gold the Kalsam atop the Gopuram of Ananda Nilayam Vimana of Thirumala Venkateshwara Temple in Tirupati. This is basically a massive golden domed tower that is still there today at what is one of the biggest spiritual centers for Hinduism in the modern world. And it is there, and the golden tower is the iconic image of the temple, and it exists thanks to this man.
And somehow the British didn't steal it.
Yeah, well, it's pretty hard to steal a 12-story tower made of solid gold. I mean, you can't just pick up an entire city. What are we, Germans in Pergamon?
We made that joke twice now, haven't we?
Yeah.
Oh, we made it once before the recording, and I'm going to put it in here if it kills me.
Oh, we didn't put that one in the record. Awesome. Perfect.
I'm getting it in if it kills me, because
Didn't they also take the gates of Ishtar?
they took a lot of things.
Including all the jewels that adorned the Taj Mahal, which we also talked about, where it ended up.
The British did that one, not the Germans.
I know.
Yeah.
No, I didn't mention the British, so.
It's German. He then proceeds to go on an absolute building spree.
As you do.
As he refurbishes the temples in Trichy, Tanjore, and Kanchipuram. And he completely revamps the temple of Lord Shiva in Chidambaram and the Vishnu temple in Srirangam, which good for him. He's not just focusing on the Shiva temples here. But if you thought that meant he was done, no, because he also constructs an entire temple at Aragalur, because most of what he's done so far has just been make existing sites better. So why not build your own from scratch?
Well, again, that's kind of something that happens a lot, again, with empires and with dynastic rulers who are like, this is my projection of power. I'm going to build great buildings to show how powerful I was.
Yeah. Well, you also have the entire treasury of 8 separate nations currently sitting in your coffers.
Yeah, so what am I going to do with all this money?
Yeah. Yeah, that certainly doesn't hurt. It's a very important thing. Uh, However, this even more imperialistic version of the Pandya lasts even less time than their previous kingdom. You notice the more aggressive they become, the greater their glory and the shorter their longevity.
Got like
As
burned out real quick, yeah.
Yeah, as in 1308, just 92 years after their return to power, there is a succession dispute following the death of Maravar Manban Kulasakara Pandya the First.
Jesus Christ, a hell of a name.
Yeah, uh, basically two of his sons start fighting over which one of them should be king. This greatly weakens the Pandya to a point that they don't actually recover in time to deal with what is now the Delhi Sultanate, which is a Muslim sultanate ruling northern India at the time. They don't recover in time to deal with them, and the Delhi Sultanate invades and pushes the Pandya out of Madurai once again, and corners them in what is excuse me, in what is Tirunelveli. However, the Pandya aren't done yet. The Pandya have one final play up their sleeve. They still remember some of their old playbook from when they were a small nation on the borders of much larger imperialistic empires, and so they appeal to the Delhi Sultanate's rival empire, the Vijayanagar Empire, to retake Madurai and push out the Delhi Sultanate, which they do. Problem is, the new empire does not give the land back. And at this point, their power is spent, and the Pandya remain confined to Tirunelveli until they disappear from history in the 17th century, following things like the British. So there we go. The British are back.
Not again.
Always the Brits.
Yep.
You know what the British really are? They're just like the 16th, 17th, and 18th century sea peoples.
Except the issue is they would come, they would visit, and they would just never leave.
Yeah.
Maybe the sea peoples never left. Sea peoples. Maybe the sea peoples were us.
Actually, there is some evidence that they settled for a time in Sicily and or Sardinia.
Oh, really? Okay, that's actually kind of cool.
There's some evidence that they settled there, among other places. But back to what we're doing here. So that is the end of the Pandya. During their 21 centuries on Earth as a political power, they became very well known primarily for water management, agriculture, and fisheries. They were masters of dealing with the monsoons and their subsequent droughts, which really is how you survive all this.
I mean, like, shit. Like, people, I mean, it doesn't seem that glamorous because, it's not war and conquest. But, like, for fuck's sake, like, you have to give it to them. They just lived for, like, so long. Survive. I mean, the Tamil people are still around today, but, like,
but
this
like
one dynasty.
The Pandya dynasty is no more. They vanished from history in the 1600s.
Still, that's how you do it. Water management, agriculture,
and not expansionism.
Yeah, 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 definitely. One of their big accomplishments with this is closed stream banks, which is just a means of preventing erosion uh, on the banks of rivers. Basically, instead of irrigating rivers out, what you essentially do is you essentially wall off the borders of the river so that it doesn't get contaminated with sediments, and so that the shape of the river doesn't change as much over time as rivers are wont to try and cut away at the sides of their banks and then change course, which in an area that is known for all the rivers vanishing and then everything floods is pretty useful to make sure that you consistently have the same river in the same spot.
Also, you just totally mentioned another thing, flood control. It's one of the first, like, truly big attempts at preventing disaster.
Yep. Yep. They were. Yep, definitely. They were also, but their mastery of water wasn't limited to just rivers, as they were accomplished mariners. They were good at sailing. They were good at fishing, and their primary export for much of their history was pearls. They were pearl divers.
Mm-hmm.
Not me pearls.
Yep. So see, when you have a high value luxury good as your chief export, you're going to do pretty well.
But the biggest thing that they did well was just preserving their kingdom. They preserved their territories, and they didn't overly expand. They didn't have too many, like, territorial designs, because a lot of times what happens is these empires blow up to an unsustainable size, and then the whole house of cards collapses.
Yep.
This didn't quite happen. But they, like you said, they did fall to the infighting, and they fell to the Islamic invasion of the 17th century.
No. So yeah, that's one of the things that that line is here. That line that right there is false.
Ooh.
I kept it in here because so many different sites kept saying it was the Muslim invaders of the 16th century that destroyed the Pandya. That is not true. Number one, the Muslims invade earlier. Number two, they're not destroyed. They continue to exist. They fight back against them with the Vijayanagar Empire. I really cannot say that one. They fight back against them. The Vijayanagar don't share the spoils with them after doing most of the work, and they dwindle into obscurity until about the time the British show up, at which point they're just pushed out of history. So they don't fall like that. They lose, their empire is broken, but they're still there. They're still controlling a chunk of territory.
Well, that's a good place to end for the Panja. What about the Chola? We talked about them a little bit earlier.
Yes, the Chola. This is the second great dynasty. So the Chola get their start ruling. They rule the east coast of India and Sri Lanka. That is their primary area. They are prominent from the 10th to 13th century CE when they kick out the Pandya off of mainland India. However, they are first recorded in the 3rd century BCE by the Mauryan Empire, specifically under the great conqueror Ashoka the Great, who he's a pretty massive warlord, and he is good at what he does. He rules the territory north of Tamilakam, and he takes note of these people here. And true to Tamil tradition, they are small, non-aggressive, non-imperialistic, and so he completely ignores them. Well, mostly ignores them. The Chola are based in what is known as the Kaveri Valley, centered on the cities of Thanjavur and Urayur. And the symbol for their dynasty is a tiger. They want to promote an aesthetic of power and awe, being that they rule for a relatively small period of time and don't really have as much going for them in terms of economics as um, as the other main dynasties. They were one of the more uh, militant groups, as they were in constant conflict with either the Pandya or the Pallava. For almost the entirety of their history, they were constantly either fighting to continue existing or fighting to get just a little bit more. Which is where they go. Their height comes under a man known as King Raja Cholan I, who rules from 985 to 1014 CE. This man has too many names, because he is also known as Mamundi Chola, Arumozi Chola, and Raja the Great.
I like
That's
that
got-
last one the most.
Yeah.
You got 4 names.
Yeah. Yeah, researching this man was hell and a half, because like, what? There's another name for him already. every 5 sentences. Hurts.
I wonder if anyone can shed some light on that. That one's probably that'd be a very good, interesting comment for someone to make. Tell us about.
Yep, I really. This man has a lot going for him. So he conquers the Maldive Islands and part of Sri Lanka, and he takes up the major building aspect of the Tamil when he commissions the Brihadishwara Temple in Tanjore to celebrate his victory over the Maldives. He is what allows the Chola to have a more or less a more naval empire than a lot of the Tamil kings, as his focus is on controlling that waterway.
But he conquered the Maldives? What is he, trying to go on vacation?
Conquered the Maldive Islands and part of Sri Lanka. Yep, probably. He does earn himself the title the Great, not just for his naval conquests, but also because he proves to be probably one of the best administrators the Tamil have out of all their dynasties. He performs a massive reorganization of land units when he's reincorporating his empire. In the year 1000, he takes his entire countryside and not redistributes, but reorganizes the boundaries along the lines of singular land units called Balanadu, which translate to fertile land. So basically, he assesses the fertility of his entire kingdom, divides it up based on that, divides that based on set units, and proceeds to govern based on those units. The man basically applied a value grid to his entire country in order to get the max out of it that he could. That is no small feat.
The man decided to min-max his entire country.
Yeah, am I the one? Is he the one that we should blame for like property taxes and like the way we have to deal with shit now?
No, that'd be English common law.
Bastards.
Yeah. His other big accomplishment is the Brihadishwara Temple, also known as the Big Temple, which was constructed in 1010 CE. It is one of the major Hindu temples dedicated to Shiva, and it is one of the tallest from medieval India, as it stood 60 meters or 197 feet tall. So this is one of the tallest temples.
And definitely one of the tallest buildings in the world at that point.
Yeah, I think it actually holds the record for that for, I think, almost 40 years.
Which is pretty solid.
Yeah.
It is. So it is one of the largest buildings in the world in the 11th century. Which is, That's pretty damn impressive, seeing as how we've got like pyramids in Egypt. But there is he is succeeded by his son Rangenja Chola the First, who really he's kind of the last real big push for these guys, as he extends the Chola realm north to the banks of the Ganga in northern India. He expands west over the Indian Sea, and he takes tribute from Thailand and Khmer, which is now Cambodia.
Wow.
He takes his father's idea of, hang on, we have boats, and uses it to basically tax all of Southeast India or Southeast Asia. Just starts taxing Southeast Asia.
As one does. I mean, you get the opportunity, you get the chance, you get the money.
And
how did they do it? Because they had boats.
basically,
I love
they
it.
had, they had they had a major naval fleet. A lot of the powers in Indonesia, Southeast Asia, and even China have these cycles where they wax and wane over whether or not they even have a navy. They go from being massive naval powers to not even knowing what a ship is. And so if you happen to have at least a modest navy at a time when these people are focusing almost entirely inland, you basically just own their coast.
I find it specifically kind of ironic considering that, like, that part of the world, Indonesia, Polynesia, a little bit further, like, southeast, you basically needed a boat to colonize and, well, not colonize, to settle the lands initially.
Yeah.
So the fact that they were like, yeah, we have these boats, we could sail to all these islands too. What are boats?
Basically the large islands of Indonesia, the mainland of Southeast Asia, and China, they had enough land where they would end up having these periods of massive internal focus, where they're focusing entirely on what they have and not doing anything with the boats like trade or exploration. And that means they don't know how to use the boats. They stop building the boats, and someone like Rajendra can come in and basically take whatever they want. He is actually considered one of the best sovereigns of all India, largely for being able to do that.
Well, yeah, when you're able to tax foreign
I mean,
nations, you're doing all right.
Yeah, a internal Indian kingdom, exacting tribute from distant external nations is pretty impressive, especially the Khmer, which are a powerful and wealthy people for most of their history. Like that's very impressive. Like Thailand never dies, but Khmer, those they these are the people who built Angkor Wat, and you're just saying, yeah, I have boat, give me all your money.
And they go, okay, good proposition. Here's my money.
Like, I'm just imagining like a mugging situation. The Chola show up, be like, give me all your money. Oh no, he's got a boat.
Yep. Yeah. Do you believe you can walk on water?
See, I imagine that it's actually the opposite, where it's like they show up in the boats and they go, hey, can we have some money? And the Khmer and the Thais are like, if you had to sail here to ask for money, you probably need it more than I do. Here you go. Here's a few.
Yeah.
Because they never went to war. They never fought, so maybe it was like a charity.
Yeah. Well, I don't know whether or not they went to war. I just know that he's the one who took tribute from them. I assume you have to kill somebody in order to get that to happen.
I absolutely would love if it was a peaceful.
Yeah. Be hilarious. Probably wasn't. I mean, we are talking about Khmer. There's nothing peaceful in that land. However, the Chola, their glory does not last, as in 1279 they are conquered by the Pandya, who are basically reconquering most of the lands that the Chola have. They took from them. And with that point, the Chola dynasty is no more. They don't make a comeback, and as far as we can tell, they don't really survive this. Unlike the Pandya, which do survive getting quote unquote wiped out by the Delhi Sultanate. Because if you can have another empire wage a proxy war on your behalf, you're not dead.
True.
Uh,
Now, who's this third dynasty? This one I'm not familiar with.
Yeah,
Or
this
at least
is
I.
yeah,
Speed run.
yep. Yeah, this is the last one here. They're also one of the ones we have the least information on, because unlike the Pandya, the Chola, and even the Pallava to an extent, they're pretty they're pretty chill for the most part. These are the Chera dynasty. They rule the southwestern coast of India, which means that they're in the territory that primarily has to deal with things like the Pallava, as opposed to the Panda and the Chola, both of which are fighting over Sri Lanka at any given time. So they're a little bit further away from that center of writing and literature that is the Pandya. And they reach the height of their power in the 9th century CE. However, it is the Pandya that first take note of them in the 1st century CE, making them arguably the youngest of the dynasties. They're also the only dynasty whose first recorded instance comes from within the Tamil people themselves, as the Pandya are a fellow Tamil dynasty. Their history is really iffy, but basically there are 2 stages. There's what's known as the early Chera, which is everything prior to the 5th century CE, in which they are a small kingdom competing with the Ai and Eshimala kingdoms that border them. They do appear to outcompete those kingdoms, as the second half of their century, which is the later Chera or the Kulasekara, which begin in the 8th to 12th century CE. There is a gap there from the 5th to 8th century where we don't really know where the early Chera end and the Kulashikara begin, as tends to happen when you're on the other side of the continent from, the center of writing. Their capital city of the Chera was Karur, and their dynastic emblem was a bow, emphasizing once again a need to project military might. These were a people that came to power by basically fighting a 2-front war. So naturally, they're going to take a military approach. However, they are not known for any real military conquest. In fact, they are known for being excellent and expert merchants. Their primary contribution to history is the jewel and spice trade, which allowed them to exert control and influence over Indonesia, thanks to all their trade connections. Now, unlike the Chola, which were exacting tribute from Southeast Asia a few centuries later, the Chera aren't exacting tribute. What they're doing is they're applying what is known as corporate economics.
Oh no!
Where basically they threaten to defund your entire government unless you do what they say.
Corporatocracy, no!
Oh no. Hello. Yes, we have noticed that you are the most inefficient region in the empire, so now we're going to expect more tribute from you. And we can't have a regression in your numbers from last year. I don't care if there was a drought. our numbers need to continuously be on the rise. We have stockholders to pay out to.
Yeah. So Indonesia is a major producer of spice. The Chera control the export of spice west of India.
They control
To
the spice
very,
trade.
very profitable markets in Northern Africa, the Middle East, and Europe.
So you
Meaning
mean-
that they can basically cut off Indonesia from money at any given time.
They
Oh,
control
my.
the spice trade.
Yes, thank you, Dune. Yeah. And they do leave a lasting legacy here, as the modern Indian district of Kerala draws its name from Chera, which is the Chera dynasty. So they live on spiritually in name, whereas the others live on with legacies of great kings and massive temples. Their legacy of wealth has led to a continuance of name for the region, which not as fancy, but it'll do nicely for people whose primary power was we have all the money. Naturally, things get named after us.
I guess, yeah. Like when a company sponsors a whole building at a university.
Basically,
I was thinking like
they
stadium
sponsored
rights.
an entire district of the Indian government.
Oh no, they own the naming rights. I wonder when that expires. God, just
Yeah,
imagine
that
if
is-
that was like the genuine way things went. Of like, we are the state of Illinois, sponsored by Target.
Don't be
Now we're
ridiculous.
sponsored by JB Pritzker.
Yeah, don't be ridiculous. JB Pritzker presents Jeff Bezos's Amazon extravaganza of Illinois.
Oh my god. That would be a new level of like corporate hellscape if they get to the point of sponsoring states.
Yeah, but
Oh,
that's,
gee.
yeah, but more or less what happened is the Chera were the powerful dynasty in this region. People remembered, and the name of the dynasty eventually morphed into the name of the region. Especially as the Chera are the only one of the three crowns of the Tamil king to be on the western half of the subcontinent, excluding, of course, the Pallava, because apparently internal discrimination is great.
I guess.
And I think on that terrible bombshell,
First time that's actually been appropriate for you to end on.
Yeah.
if
that
you
phrase.
thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to drop a like down below, and be sure to check out the Humanitarian collections, where we are currently releasing a t-shirt design that is there to help support the Trevor Project, an LGBT charity that we are working with, that we are going to be donating the profits to. The link will be in the bio, and we'll also have the link to the episode that we mentioned earlier. And yeah, thank you guys for watching.